Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here to talk about a very, very important project. We are here, me and Aline, to present this so amazing project. Hello, Aline.
Hello, Fabiano. Hello, everyone.
Hello. So we also have other people here from Slow Phone. Sylvia, welcome. Eric and Nuri, welcome, Eric and Nuri. And also here, our special invitee, it's Cici. Hello, Cici.
Hello.
Welcome. So I ask now Cici to introduce our two guests this night.
I am so honored to introduce to everybody Patti and Doug Wood, who I've had the privilege of collaborating with on a number of projects over the years. And I'll read a little bit about their individual backgrounds. So Patti Wood is the founder and executive director of Grassroots Environmental Education, an award-winning not-for-profit organization with a mission to inform the public and decision makers about the health risks of common environmental exposures. She is a visiting scholar at Adelphi University, teaching in the College of Nursing and Public Health, and she is a frequent guest lecturer at numerous colleges and universities. She has served on the New York State Department of Health and Governor's Advisory Council on Sustainability and Green Procurement, and currently serves on the New York State Environmental Action Team studying environmental causes of cancer. Patti is the co-host of Green Street, a nationally syndicated radio show and podcast covering emerging environmental health issues with guest authors and scientists on the cutting edge of research. She is also the author of a book called Helping to Heal for parents and children with cancer and other life-threatening issues, and an award-winning writer for the newspaper column Earth Matters. Patti is the co-creator of the Babysafe Project, this program with a mission to educate pregnant women about the potential risks to developing babies from wireless radiation exposures. The program is based on emerging peer-reviewed science and recommends simple steps pregnant women can take to reduce the risk. Patti also is the co-creator of another project called Safe Schools. This is an initiative to address the increasing use of wireless technologies for classroom learning. This program investigates the potential legal liabilities of school districts. It provides them with mitigation techniques to reduce or eliminate radiofrequency radiation in our classrooms, and shares the growing body of peer-reviewed science on non-ionizing radiation and human health with administrators, parents, and students. Now, Patti's husband, Doug Wood, is the associate director of the nonprofit Grassroots Environmental Education, focusing on strategic planning and campaign development. Doug is the founder and national director of Americans for Responsible Technology and co-creator of the Safe Schools Project, as well as the Babysafe Project. Doug is also the author of the Joint Statement on Pregnancy and Radiofrequency Radiation, which you'll find at the Babysafe Project website. And he is also the co-creator of the International Declaration of the Human Rights of Children in the Digital Age, which has been signed by thousands of health professionals and supporters from more than 40 countries. An accomplished filmmaker, Doug's documentary films on environmental issues and children's health have widely been acclaimed and used by organizations around the world to promote protective public health policies, including the 2 videos on the Babysafe Project website, one of which we will share with you today. Doug is also a producer of television and radio commercials, including successful public relations campaigns on environmental health and hydrofracking. Doug and Patti are hosts of Green Street, a weekly environmental health radio show broadcast in New York and California, which is also syndicated through the Pacifica Network and available everywhere as a podcast. So we are so delighted to have Patti and Doug with us tonight, and we look forward to their presentation. And we will follow up at the end with questions and answers. So please feel free to drop your questions into the chat. We like to keep the chat relatively quiet so that folks can focus on the presentation. But if you do have questions, please do drop them into the chat and we'll see what we can respond to at the end. So thank you everyone for joining us, and we welcome Patti and Doug Wood.
Thank you so much, Cece, for that nice introduction. And thank you to Fabiano and Aline for inviting us to be part of the program tonight. We appreciate everything that you're doing at Slow Phone in Brazil to inform people about the risks of wireless radiation. And we're happy to share with you about the Babysafe Project and our work on the issue of radio frequency radiation, or as we call it, wireless radiation. Aline, can you put up the slides for me, please? So the Babysafe Project is just one aspect of our work on wireless radiation. Many of you may already know about the International Declaration on the Human Rights of Children in the Digital Age, which we co-wrote with an attorney in California named Julian Gresser. That document has now been signed by thousands of people from around the world, including many medical and scientific professionals who recognize the dangers of wireless radiation, especially for young people, and who share our concern about the impact of technology on their lives. If you haven't yet signed the declaration, we invite you to do so. The website is thechildrensdeclaration.org, and we're hoping that you will share this with your friends, your family, any of your colleagues in the medical profession or the research community. We are also the founders, as Cece mentioned, of Americans for Responsible Technology, which is a coalition of hundreds of small, independent organizations across the United States who are working to limit the public's exposure to wireless radiation. On that website, we have a toolbox you'll see in the menu across the top, and I urge you to go take a look there. There are many things that you might find useful in your advocacy work there that talk about wireless radiation in general. So I encourage you also to look at that. And finally, we are, these projects are all part of our larger environmental education organization called Grassroots. This is our main organization. And through that organization, we work on a wide range of issues, from chemicals in artificial turf to chemical exposures associated with drilling for oil and gas. We talk about antibiotics in our food supply and PFAS in our drinking water and chemicals in consumer products, and of course, the worldwide plastic crisis. We are a science-based organization. We really don't get involved in an issue until or unless there is sufficient published, peer-reviewed scientific studies by independent scientists where they're demonstrating a strong risk of harm to human health. Our job, we think, is to help the scientists make their job more accessible, make their information more accessible to the public. And that really brings me to the Babysafe Project. And here to talk about the Babysafe Project is the one and only Patti Wood.
So we're delighted, absolutely delighted to be here, and thank you so much for this invitation. Just to give you a little background, several years ago, Dr. Hugh Taylor, who is the chair of reproductive sciences and OBGYN at Yale University School of Medicine, gave a presentation in Connecticut in a small town called Stonington about the results of a 2012 study that was conducted by his colleagues at Yale, which showed significant neurological harm to the offspring of pregnant mice who were exposed to just typical cell phone radiation. The mice exposed to RF microwave radiation produced offspring that were more hyperactive, had poorer memories compared to their unexposed control group, and they examined the brain structure of the exposed animals and discovered significant neuron damage in the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that controls behavior, with no such damage evident in the control group. The work of the Yale researchers followed a steady progression of scientific studies that demonstrated this same thing, this neurological and behavioral effects from wireless radiation exposure. And a review of the scientific literature on radiofrequency microwave radiation goes back decades, conducted by the US Air Force. And it concluded that, quote, behavior may be the most sensitive biological component to RF radiation exposure. Two additional examples are scientists at the University of Washington demonstrated DNA breaks in brain cells of laboratory animals resulting from exposure. And UCLA, University of California at Los Angeles, researchers studied 13,000 mothers and children and found that prenatal exposure to cell phones was associated with a higher risk for behavioral problems and hyperactivity in children. A growing number of researchers concur that prenatal developmental effects are also especially worrisome as they can be heritable or passed down to future generations. Another important study conducted by the Kaiser Permanente Division of Research in Oakland, California in 2017 showed that pregnant women exposed to high radiation levels from sources like cell phones, wireless devices, cell towers, and other electromagnetic fields miscarried at nearly 3 times the rate as those exposed to low levels. And for the study, more than 900 pregnant women in the San Francisco area actually carried meters around that measured their exposure to electromagnetic field radiation 24 hours a day. Many of these studies can be found on the Babysafe Project website, along with many others. And that website is babysafeproject.org, and the studies can be found in the science section. At the Connecticut meeting where Dr. Taylor of Yale made his presentation, we spent several hours talking with Dr. Deborah Davis, a noted epidemiologist and toxicologist known for her work on environmental health hazards and cancer research. She is the founder and president of the Environmental Health Trust, which focuses on environmental health research and education, and specifically now on RF radiation. We all agreed that a public education campaign to warn pregnant women about the potential dangers of using wireless technology around a developing baby was critical. Grassroots then took on the task of creating the project with its website, writing and printing the brochure, which is now translated into many different languages, creating the joint statement, which has been signed by thousands of medical professionals, which Doug mentioned, around the world. And he will talk about that in a little bit more detail later, and creating informative videos of medical and research professionals talking about the urgency of this issue. We really wanted to share with you one of the short videos featuring Dr. Taylor, Dr. Davis, and Dr. Leo Trisande, who is a longtime associate of ours, a pediatrician, a researcher, and board member of Grassroots Environmental Education.
So, Aileen, can you play the video, please?
Pregnancy is a time of great excitement when women take a great deal of care about what they eat and what they do. It's a wonderful period of time that's over faster than you can imagine. The exposures can take place from all sorts of things, and we can't put pregnant women in bubbles. We don't want to, but we want to make sure that they make healthy babies when and if they choose to do so. Now, having worked at the National Academy of Sciences for 10 years and worked with some of the top scientists in the world, I thought there could be no problem with cell phones, because if there were, I would know about it and so would all my colleagues. Well, what I found out was that I was completely wrong. We worked on passive smoke. We worked on asbestos. And in each one of these things, what we saw was an epidemic in slow motion. We knew that tobacco caused cancer in the 1930s. We have known the dangers of asbestos also for more than 100 years. And yet the arguments went on and on and on. Show me the proof. And the answer is, you show me the money.
When a baby's born, there are 100 billion neurons, or nerve cells, in the body. Many of them are competing for connections all of those cells are bridging connections, even in the first few months of pregnancy. And disruption of those earliest signals can have serious implications for later life. Nerve cell connections that shouldn't be there may stay. Nerve cell signals may be disrupted. The wrong signal may get sent to the wrong neuron. And as a result, there may be permanent changes in how the wiring of our brain is left. How those nerve cell connections finalize is critical for many aspects of our function as human beings on this earth.
We really have to start asking, what about all this wireless radiation that I'm surrounded with? You don't get to control a lot of it in public places, but in your own home, in your own space, in your own workplace, you really do have the right to control what you're exposed to. You've got cordless phones, you've got cell phones, you've got tablets, you have Wi-Fi monitors, and you may have baby monitors. And all of them are emitting wireless radiation. And the total effect of all of these things is something that we have never examined.
The fetus is perhaps the most vulnerable to these types of insults. When the brain is just forming, we are perhaps at our most vulnerable stage. So this is a study that really looked at only the effect of prenatal exposure to cell phone radiation. What effect does having a cell phone near your baby when you're pregnant have on that baby later on in life when that baby's grown up? We tested these mice when they reached adulthood and looked at the lasting effect of that early prenatal cell phone exposure. The mice who were exposed to cell phones were more hyperactive. They were running around the cage a lot more aggressively. They had poorer memory. They couldn't remember objects in the cage as well as their counterparts who weren't exposed to the cell phone radiation. But they did not have any increased anxiety, as sometimes running around can be a sign of anxiety. It was not that. They were calm and relaxed. So they were running around these cages, bouncing off the walls, not a care in the world. Something that, in our eyes, resembles attention deficit hyperactivity disorder in children. That was the closest model we can think of to the behavioral effects that we saw in the mice.
When I first saw Hugh Taylor's study, I was thrilled and really deeply concerned, because I was aware of research earlier looking at what happens inside the brain. And if you look at something called the dentate gyrus, which occurs here and is quite critical to where brain cells form for thinking and learning, you can see that prenatally exposed rats develop smaller brains with more brain damage.
The brain is tremendously resilient, but when there's so many environmental insults at once, the circuitry in the brain becomes overwhelmed. And unlike what we have in our electrical wiring in homes, where there's a circuit breaker that can stop the electrical flow before it causes damage, the brain doesn't have that same capacity. And so environmental insults, when they add up, the circuitry is especially vulnerable.
We have some human evidence now where a few studies have followed women with exposures to electromagnetic fields, and they have seen that their children who were exposed to more electromagnetic radiation tend to have more learning disabilities and more problems in school.
Mothers who spent a lot of time on the cell phone, carried a cell phone with them during their pregnancies, had a higher risk of having children with behavioral problems. And I think when you have clear cause and effect relationship in mice, and an association in women, that women who use these cell phones had children with more behavioral problems, I think that's together very powerful evidence saying that this is truly a cause and effect in humans as well. The mouse studies prove that it's really causative, that the cell phones are causing it. It's not just because of some other behaviors linked to cell phones in women.
Children are often the recipient of environmental insults and suffer the consequences, yet they can't weigh in the same way as the organizations, the industries that produce these environmental insults. And so that's why it's terribly important for researchers, scientists, and the public at large to advocate for being proactive and preventing hazardous exposures before they occur.
You know, it may be that humans and mice are different, and the effect might be somewhat different in humans than mice. But at this point, I wouldn't take any chances. There's essentially no downside to being cautious and protecting your baby.
Most pregnant women understand they should stay away from cigarette smoke, they should not drink alcohol, they should not drink coffee, they need to be careful about what they eat. They know that. But they aren't aware of the need to minimize their exposure to wireless radiation. We cannot afford to treat this generation as experiments in a subject with no controls.
So thank you for taking the time and listening. This gives such credibility to the project, having these really important researchers and medical doctors working on this alongside what we're trying to do as well. And it's something very just very important for this project. But anyway, the ubiquitous and ever-growing wireless world that we live in means that wireless radiation exposure is unavoidable. But you can take steps to reduce your exposure, and is something that we are really encouraging pregnant women to do. It is such a simple thing. First, just keeping a safe distance from transmitters, keeping your personal wireless devices away from your body is relatively easy to do. The amount of time you spend using wireless devices is also important. And remembering that the exposure is cumulative is a critical piece of this. You must understand that the exposures are cumulative and the effects are cumulative. Okay, so I'm just going to go over very briefly some of the tips that we talk about in the Babysafe Project. One is to never carry your cell phone in a pocket or a bag near your developing baby. Most manufacturers of cell phones actually have this recommendation in the legal section of the phone. You go all the way down to the bottom and you find radiation, and it says, do not carry this device against your body. Well, what does that mean? It means don't hold it against your head. Do not ever put it in a pocket. Back pockets, front pockets, even a pocket in a pocketbook that you carry close to your body on a regular basis. So that's important. And never rest a wireless device on your abdomen. You see people commuting back and forth to the city, for their jobs. They've got their wireless laptops. They're pregnant. They use their pregnant belly as a desktop. And so, these are things that pregnant women would not do if they knew the potential risk to that baby that they're carrying. We also recommend that they consider using a radiation blocking blanket if they spend a lot of time on devices. This is true of women who work in offices where they're just, their bellies are right up close to the desk surface. Avoid making calls. These are just things for everybody, but avoid making calls when the signal on your phone is weak, because it causes the cell phones to boost RF transmission power, generating more radiation. Get a corded landline in your home where you can talk safely for hours. But you have to note that cordless or decked phones have similar radiation risks as cell phones. The phone itself is like a cell phone, and the base that you charge it on is like having a mini antenna in your home, often next to your bed or next to a place where you spend a lot of time. You have to not sleep with your phone under your pillow. This is something that we are constantly talking to teenagers about. They don't want to miss anything. So they go to bed with that cell phone, which is just, this is an umbilical cord for them. But turn off all the routers in your home at night if you have that capability. And then if you live in an apartment where someone has their router directly, on the other side of the wall where you're sleeping, move your bed, or ask your neighbor to move that router. And using technology safely is such a simple thing. I mean, even if they just don't put a cell phone in their pockets over that baby, that would be a huge, huge thing to do, and such a simple thing to do. Okay, so I want to end by just quoting the American Academy of Pediatrics, and they say, quote, "Current FCC standards do not account for the unique vulnerability and use patterns specific to pregnant women and children. It is essential that any new standards for cell phones and other wireless devices be based on protecting the youngest and most vulnerable populations to ensure they are safeguarded throughout their lifetimes." This is a very powerful quote. You can see the entire letter from the American Academy of Pediatrics in that toolbox which Doug mentioned earlier, which is on Americans for Responsible Technology website, which is Americans, the letter 4, response. I mean the number 4, responsibletech.org. That's an incredibly useful site with a lot of resources. So I'm going to end there. Doug, you want to say something else? Yeah.
So,
am I going to move over?
No, are you going to move over?
Yes, I'm going to move over.
That was the question. So one of the things that we did as part of the Babysafe Project is to develop a joint statement for scientists to sign, because we felt it was important to get the word out to medical and scientific professionals and for them to endorse the Babysafe Project. And I'm happy to say that almost 600 or 700 PhDs and MDs from around the world have endorsed this Babysafe Project, and we're very happy about that. And I just want to read you a bit from the joint statement, because I think it kind of it applies to all of us, not just medical professionals. So it says, "We join together as physicians, scientists, and educators to express our concern about the risk that radiofrequency radiation poses to pregnancy and to urge women to limit their exposures. We recognize that the delicate systems that direct the development of human life are vulnerable to environmental insults, and that even minute exposures during critical windows of development may have serious and lifelong consequences. We know that the scientific process demands a thorough and exhaustive examination of the possible impact of RF radiation on health. However, we believe substantial evidence of risk rather than the proof of harm must be the trigger for action to protect public health. We call on the research community to conduct more studies to identify the mechanisms by which a fetus could be affected by RF radiation exposures. We call on our elected leaders to support such research and to advance policies and regulations that limit exposures for pregnant women. We call on the industry itself to implement and explore technologies and designs that will reduce radiation exposures until such research is carried out. We affirm our role as health and science professionals to inform the public about the potential dangers associated with early life exposures to RF radiation, and invite all professionals engaged in obstetric, pediatric, and environmental health advocacy to join us in our quest to ensure the safety and health of future generations. So that pretty much, come on back in here. That pretty much sums up our Babysafe Project. You got to get used to us, folks. We've been married for a long time, and we're very informal with each other. So that's a bit about our Babysafe Project. Again, thank you for inviting us. It's a pleasure to talk about this project, because we put a lot of time and energy into it. We hope that it's useful to you and to other people around the world, and we're happy to answer your questions.
Thank you so much, Doug and Patti. It was a very impacting presentation. I will start with the first question. Here I put the website of the Americans for Responsible Tech. I just entered in this site. I really encourage you guys to enter in the toolkits section. There's a lot of very nice material. I didn't know that, so thank you so much. So my first question is, Dr. Deborah Davis told about asbestos and tobacco, and she was talking about, oh, show me the evidence, show me the evidence. Is the same thing that that I've been working like more than 5 years with this subject. And I would like to hear from you, Patti and Doug, about what the similarities and the difference between asbestos and tobacco with the EMF. And especially because tobacco, let's say you can use like zero tobacco, asbestos also you can go to zero, but maybe EMF it's really hard to go to zero. So, and also about the evidence, what do you think, and how long will you take this? Like, how many decades or how many years?
Powerful.
What's your opinion about the comparison between them?
Well, I think Dr. Davis was really talking about the idea that, an industry came along and began to make money doing something, and then the science, science is slow. Science is not as fast as commerce. So this often happens in our world, that the ability to sell something gets out ahead of the science. And then the science comes along and says, wait. We see this in many fields. We certainly saw it in asbestos, and in other things. I mean, right now we're looking at the issue of artificial turf fields, and that's another example where an industry has gotten out ahead and made a lot of money, and now they don't want to hear about any science that says that there might be a problem. Mm-hmm. In terms of how long it's going to take, when we created the Babysafe Project, which I can't believe was almost 10 years ago, we thought that it would be a faster turnover, that the public would really, would get it. But we all know how much money the wireless industry is making and how much they're putting into their advertising and the promotion of their products. So it's an ongoing fight. It's going to take all of us. It's going to take everybody on this call and everybody that's concerned about this issue to keep pushing the information out there and to not let it go. One of the things that we've done that you can get through the Americans for Responsible Technology website is we have a booklet that we've produced. We have it here? Mm-hmm. We have a booklet basically that outlines the history of wireless radiation research, the science, right?
It's called RF radiation, an undeniable risk. And it really is a history of the scientific research on this issue. And it's really, I think, a valuable piece. You'd be welcome to translate it into Portuguese. We would love to see that. But I just wanted to also say that, I think we have a little bit better shot with this if we are really persistent, because we're talking about a demographic that is really vulnerable and is ready to change. And I'm not talking about the baby, I'm talking about the parents. Mm-hmm. Because if there was ever a demographic that is going to change the way they do things for the, to protect an unborn child or even a young child, it's young parents. They will make change more than any other, age, demographic out there. So it just needs to be introduced to OBGYNs, to midwives, to, anybody who's working in the prenatal field, to just get this information out. Now we produced a brochure, and it's been translated into many languages, but just getting people onto the website.
Including Portuguese, I might.
Yeah, just recently.
Yep. Yeah. Well, we got it done. That's the point.
We did.
Okay.
It's just critically important. Just to give you an idea of what we're doing with it. I mean, we're going to conferences for OBGYNs, to holistic moms conferences, to midwives and doulas. And so we probably ship out, I would say, maybe somewhere between 150 and 400 of these brochures every week to people who are out there working with pregnant women on a daily basis. And they have it in their offices, or they provide a copy to everyone in a class that they might be conducting. And that's just important. I mean, what parent is not going to read that information and say, oh my goodness, I'm not going to put my cell phone in my pocket. I'm going to look up, getting one of these blankets that's got the silver threads in it that repels that radiation.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Someone has a question?
I'll say one more thing, and that is, Patti touched on this, but I would just want to emphasize it. The Babysafe Project takes advantage of the idea that there are three kinds of people. There are men, there are women, and there are pregnant women. And I know this because my two daughters, who are in the movie you just saw, I watched them when they became pregnant and saw how interested they were in getting information. They wanted to get as much information as they could. They knew they couldn't drink alcohol. They knew they couldn't eat tuna fish. They knew they couldn't, there were certain things that pregnant women automatically know to avoid. And so the Babysafe Project kind of plays into that. And we always viewed the Babysafe Project as kind of the first stepping stone into the world of RF radiation. So, and we hope that other people can use it in that way.
But also, and I would like to comment again that Deborah Davis says, show me the money. Because you have to follow the money, because the industry is so well connected in our government, and it's a huge lobbying force. And they just have almost unlimited resources to bury the science.
Yeah.
And it never gets real media attention in this country. So it really is a grassroots effort to get that information out there.
Cece?
You're muted, Cece.
You're muted, Cece.
Yeah.
How's that?
Good.
Okay. I wanted to mention a couple of additional resources. At Safer Screentime, we have an online course that can be completed in about an hour. So we are poised to teach like a whole workforce or a whole school staff what this issue is and what we can do to mitigate the radiation. And I also wanted to mention that as a public service, every month I do a free public education webinar here, usually the last week of the month, and it goes for about 2 hours. And I walk everybody through what the science is, what the risk factors are, what symptoms to look for, because a lot of people are already having symptoms and would never think to connect them to their use of wireless technology. And then most important, like Patti and Doug have shown us tonight, what are some baby steps we can also get started with? So Safer Screentime, if you want to train a large group at once, that has a great course on there. And then I'm also the director of Massachusetts for Safe Technology. It's MA4 safetech.org. And if you go out to my events page there, you'll be able to register for our free public education webinar. The next one is coming up on 27 August from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern time. So anybody is welcome to come learn. And I love doing that program because people will come and get the courage to fix one thing that they're doing. And then they'll get accustomed to that. And then they'll come and watch again and come ask their questions and then maybe try changing another thing. So we know it's overwhelming. We know it's like drinking water from a fire hose, but we have so many excellent resources today that we didn't have a decade or more ago when Patti and Doug and I all kind of got involved in this issue. So please just know there's something all the time to bring yourself and new people into this conversation, and we'll share with you up-to-date information. Thank you.
Thank you, Cece. Thank you, Pat and Doug. Your presentation was incredible. And I have a question about tech-safe schools. Cece comment that, and I would like to know more about this project as well.
Sure. So
Go ahead.
The Tech Safe Schools project is a project to warn educators about the potential impacts of exposing children to RF radiation, and to encourage them to take steps to reduce that radiation. I think many of you may know that the routers that are commonly used in schools are often overpowered, providing a lot more capacity than is needed for a typical classroom. They come from the factory set for maximum power. Why not? You know, what harm could possibly come? So, and unless the school personnel is aware of how to measure the radiation in a classroom and is aware of how to reduce the power from the router, then those children are going to be exposed to excess radiation, really unnecessarily exposed every time they're sitting in that classroom. And so the website is techsafeschools.org. Again, techsafeschools.org, and there you'll find resources for educators. Again, we have a toolbox on there, a toolkit for people with more information. We've got, one of the things that I like on there is there's a graph showing an actual school analysis, a kind of experiment was done at that school to see how far they could reduce the radiation. They reduced the radiation by 90%, and everything still worked fine. So you can get an idea of how much excess radiation is occurring in school classrooms. And I'm almost certain the same thing is true in Brazil as it is in, you know, everywhere else around the world. Kids are sitting in classrooms with these routers that are putting out way more radiation than needs to be. And of course, not every child is going to be physically affected by it, but some will be. And as parents and as people who are concerned about this, it's our responsibility to try to educate educators about this. The other thing about the Tech Safe School is this costs nothing and there's no downside. So why not do it? Again, it's a baby step to get people interested in the issue of RF radiation and to hopefully want to learn more.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say that we embarked on this project or program, the Tech Safe School, because here was an environment where you had some of the most vulnerable, right? Because they are children. It depends on their age, and the younger the age, the more vulnerable they are because of their developing bodies. And a very high radiation environment. So you have the most vulnerable and a really high radiation environment, especially if every child is working on a wireless tablet or laptop, and they're working at these community, what do you call these, tables where you have 6 or 8 children sitting around a table. They don't sit in rows often. They sit around these tables. And if you put a meter in the center of one of those tables, it's just absolutely enormous amount of radiation coming from just having that many children and that many wireless devices in a very restricted area. So, I mean, there are really simple things that can be done. You could move the router to right over the doorway instead of having it in the middle of the classroom. But right now in our country, there's a huge emphasis on tech learning, right? And so technology-based learning. And so, classrooms are being outfitted basically for free with state grants or local grants to engage with more different types of wireless devices in the classroom, like whiteboards and that kind of thing. So they just kind of, are packing these classrooms full of wireless devices, and these children are being exposed to really, really high levels of radiation. And so a school environment is something that we thought really needed to be addressed. So that's kind of where we are. But we're also, and I might just mention this, we're also in a place where even administrators of schools and parents of those children are addicted to their devices. So it's really hard for them to acknowledge that there's something wrong with it. So the battle is not an easy one.
Yes. I have do you have a question, Eric or Sylvia, Nuri?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Eric.
Hi, Patti. Hi, Doug. I live in a warmer city in Brazil. So in Brazil, we find very different kinds of responses when shown to parents health issues related to EMF radiation. And sometimes parents prefer to simply turn a blind eye to the problem because the devices can keep the children quiet. And sometimes it's simply a matter of addiction to these wireless devices. So do you have any tips on how to break this barrier, on how to make the parents change idea about this?
Well, I think that using statistics on children's behavioral problems and their learning disabilities is important and should absolutely be part of the conversation. There's no doubt that we are seeing a generation of children now that suffer from these problems. I mean, in every classroom in America, you don't just have a single teacher and 20 children. You have a teacher, and then you have 2 or 3 assistant teachers who are there to give special help to children who have either learning problems or behavioral problems. This is, kind of a new thing over the past decade or so, where it's not simple anymore to keep children and in control in a classroom and to actually help them learn. As a single teacher, you just can't do it. And children are being pulled out for specials, and parents are concerned about that. They do care. So pulling those statistics out is something that's important, and I think that you might find that useful in getting parents to move toward looking at this.
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's one of the reasons that we developed that international declaration, which, if you read it, is written like a UN declaration, really on the rights of children. Children have the right to be free from exploitation that happens online. They have a right to be free from, I think there's 3
security, right?
But one of the things is they have a right to be free from excess radiation. And so you might find that document useful because there are a lot of people who already subscribe to a lot of what's in the declaration, but may not have thought about the idea that children are being exposed to excess wireless radiation, which can't be good for them. I mean, I don't know how you can make all the arguments you want, but we know that too much radiation can't be good, right? And so again, I urge you to take a look at that. You could present that to your school committee. You could present that to whoever's in charge of your local school system. It seems like something that I think is more and more important to parents here in New York, where we live. We have just banned cell phones at schools, which is a good step forward. It was banned because of its impact on social life and mental health, not necessarily for the RF radiation, but you know what? I'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
However we get there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So take a look at the International Children's Declaration and see if that might help you begin the conversation with people who seem resistant. I know exactly what you're talking about, and it is very difficult. A lot of times you're talking to people who are holding a cell phone in their hand while they're talking to you.
Right. If I might add in as well, two things that I found are helpful to opening this conversation with others. One is show them the legal fine print in their phone that Patti mentioned, because the industry by now has conditioned us all. As soon as we open our mouths and go, I think there's something wrong with wireless tech, we're all conditioned to go, tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist, we don't have to listen to that. So when you walk them through the legal fine print in the section called RF exposure for radio frequency radiation, and they read that they tested this device at a distance from the body. So if you're holding it the way they've been giving us these devices, you're going to be exceeding the government guidelines for public radiation exposure. So that is one of the most powerful things that I found helps. We are also very fortunate that we now have the EMF, or Electromagnetic Fields Medical Conference. Once the accreditation period expired for that, the executive director of that conference, Elizabeth Kelly, took the entire 4-day conference and all the lectures and put it online for anybody in the world who's in the English-speaking capacity. They can go listen to a 20-minute lecture, a half-an-hour lecture, an hour lecture, and put all that in their calendar and just watch it on their own time. One of the recommendations that came out of that conference is that healthcare practitioners and the public use a radio frequency radiation detection meter, because this is an invisible toxin and it's really hard for people to get their minds around it. But I will tell you, when you do a demonstration with somebody to show them the radiation that comes off of their devices, now you have their attention. And then one by one, you have them go into their settings and turn off each antenna. And you watch these levels drop down from screaming red down to the green. Then they're like, wow, I never knew this. So this is the Safe and Sound Pro 2 radio frequency broadband detection meter from a company called Safe Living Technologies. This is about a $400 device. They have a little sister one that's only about $200, but they're third-party certified, they're calibrated, they're really good consumer level devices. So have a meter in hand. And I helped my local library become the first in the United States to put a meter like this on loan in our library. And now, at least here in the United States, a lot of libraries are having to reinvent themselves, because not everybody's coming in to borrow books anymore, because a lot of people are using their tech to read their books. But we became the first in the United States to put a radiation detection meter on loan in our public library. And now I'm just so thrilled when others come back and say, wow, we love that idea. We're going to get our library to put one on loan too, because most libraries today have a library of things collection. And so if anybody in your community can just go down to the library and borrow that meter, then they can share it with their schools, they can share it with their loved ones, they can take it to their next doctor's appointment. And having a meter in hand is critically important to get one's mind around this invisible toxin. Thank you.
Thank you. There is a question here from Ana Paula. Hi, thanks for the great presentation. I want to ask if you have some cases of EHS syndrome in children or adolescents.
Yes, absolutely. We've been following this very carefully. There have been a lot of legal issues associated with this, where parents have asked for special accommodations in the schools for their children. And sometimes they are given those accommodations, and sometimes those children are unable to attend school, and they wind up homeschooling or, getting their coursework, picked up at the school and brought home, from various teachers that they would have, been studying with. So this is a growing problem. We're following it pretty carefully. Kids are beginning to use phones and wireless devices at earlier and earlier ages. So we're beginning to see children younger and younger who are suffering from these what are we calling it? The EMR syndrome. And that's that you'd think would be something that parents would also be concerned about. It's really hard for children to look at their parents' use of devices and not use that as a role model for themselves. And that's a big problem. But if they see that their children are suffering, we've got our hopes that something will happen.
One of the things that Robert Kennedy has talked about, which we haven't seen yet, but one of the things that he has talked about is to have a national registry of people who are suffering from EMR syndrome. It's something that I think would be very powerful. Certainly, everyone who suffers from this would support this idea. The cell phone companies hate the idea, of course, and they're lobbying, they're trying desperately to not let that happen. But in the same way that our Food and Drug Administration keeps track of people with adverse effects to drugs, this would be a database of people who are suffering adverse effects from wireless technology. And if they can get that going, I think that will be a tremendously powerful thing for people to see how many people, including how many children, are being affected. Because we know it's a fairly large number and it's growing every day. The only other thing I'll say is, when schools do accommodate children, it is usually accompanied with what we call a non-disclosure agreement. That is, that the parents won't tell anybody else that the school is accommodating their child, because the school doesn't want to admit any potential liability. They don't want to admit that the radiation could be causing a child's illness. And so they will agree to give the child special consideration, but the parents can't say anything about it, which is really just makes me so mad, because other parents need to know. But right. I don't blame the parents for signing. You would do whatever you can to protect your kids, right?
Right. The whole Tech Safe School project was, based on the fact that administrators have a duty of care. They have a duty of care for every child in that school system. And, it's hard. It's really hard for them to admit that there may be a problem. And it's really they're obligated. They're obligated to follow the science. They're obligated. These are educational institutions. They're obligated to follow the science and to be educated about the potential risks of wireless radiation and the potential effects on their student body.
Yeah, Patti, if I might chime in, I fully agree with that. That's been our experience here in Massachusetts as well. We had a federal lawsuit at the Face School where a 10-year-old child became very, very sick from the high-powered, as Doug said, the high-powered wireless system in the school, and they would not offer accommodations. And so this lawsuit was filed, and in the end, they did find for the first time in the United States that there are biological effects at the non-thermal level. And we understand that there were other children in the school who are experiencing similar symptoms, but this is a very prestigious international school where maybe Saudi princes are sending their sons to be educated. And there were people from different cultures where in their culture, you don't speak up to authority. And so the administrators at the school were not willing to make accommodations for this child. So what I would suggest that folks do is use the amazing tools that are out there at Patti and Doug's Americans for Responsible Technology website. they have a real nice toolkit that says, form a group or join a group, and they'll walk you through how to get a group of parents together, because there's no cavalry coming. Nobody is coming to fix this for us. As parents, we've got to get educated and organized. My school superintendent, when I brought this issue up a decade ago, he looked at me and he said, "Cece, you're just one voice." And that was a very hard lesson to learn, that most of our public servants are not public leaders. And so if you follow the toolkit that Patti and Doug have at Americans for Responsible Technology, they'll show you that there's an award-winning film called Generation Zapped. Get your girlfriends together, get the dads together, get other parents and grandparents together, watch that film. And now you're starting to learn. If you need to learn more, come to my free monthly educational webinar through Massachusetts for Safe Technology. But as many times as we have presented the facts to schools, they have yet to actually protect the children. So when you get a group of parents informed and empowered, and we don't want vigilantes, we want a collaborative spirit, we want to work with the schools. But if you get a group of parents who are not going to stand still for their children being radiated in the schools, then you have the power to affect change, because there's no cavalry coming. It's up to all of us to stop looking up above for help and to get the work done for our children at the grassroots level. Thank you.
Cece, this lawsuit is from what year?
It was from, I think, 2015 at the Fay School. And if anybody goes out to Massachusetts for Safe Technology and you go to my resources page, you will find a link to Wi-Fi in schools, and you'll find a link to legal actions, and you can just scroll down. It's all bulleted and very quick to identify. And then you can just drill down into whatever information interests you the most.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you
Sylvia?
so much. Cece, Patti, so great information. Thank you so much. Sylvia, you said you have something to add?
Yes, the information is so great. I'm just listening here, and wow, every parent should be listening to what you guys are saying. It's so important. And I would just like to here in Brazil this year, there's a federal law where the children have to remove the cell phones from their classrooms. Mm-hmm. I think some states in the United States also are doing that, right?
Yes.
And it's very interesting because during their recess, children now, they are playing. Mm-hmm. My son, he's a teenager. He is 16, 17. So of course, they stayed in their cell phones. They didn't talk much in the recess. And now they are playing card games. And they lose time. For example, the recess, the bell goes on, and they are still playing because they are so into it. And they are talking. And wow, it's and another thing here at home, when he brought his friends last year, they stayed on the phone, that like teenagers murmuring. And now they come, they play, they're playing games, not only video games, but they are playing cards. They are, they're socializing much they
That's
look
great.
like different people. It's great.
That's
of course,
so
it's not because of the RF. We know it's not.
Yes.
But at least it's an improvement in some aspect. But
yes, and yet it prevents the children from RF.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, it reduces the exposition in the classroom.
Yeah, it reduces, for sure.
It was very interesting. It was in the whole country this January, because we have some states that already have this law, but in January of this year, in the whole country, is prohibited, it's forbidden to bring the cell phone in the classroom. It's a federal law, like couple months. So it's
That's
a big history.
Patti and Doug and I were brought in to help somebody in the Los Angeles Unified School District. And of course, we were congratulating their district for doing a bell-to-bell cell phone policy restriction. And one of the other features that we pointed out to them is you don't want to just take 28 cell phones from the kids and put them in a shoe rack at the back of the classroom, because that's going to be a high radiation environment. So in this letter that Doug and Patti have out in their toolkit at Americans for Responsible Technology, we encourage that they turn all the devices off before they get stored, because each one of these devices has many, many different antennas mounted in there for cellular, data, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, locator, hotspot, 5G, and all sorts of beaming things. If you don't turn off every one of those antennas, those kids are still at very high risk. But you could sell it that you don't want the distraction of their phones pinging while everybody's in the class, because we have studies that show even if they're not using the device, if it's near them or if it's making a sound, their concentration and their learning capabilities go way down. So as you're talking about these bell-to-bell cell phone bans, let's just make sure that we do our best to turn the devices off when they're stored.
Yes. Yes. Perfect.
Yep. That's very important to turn all the apps off, because they will continue to
They're programmed to go back on.
I know. Programmed
to go back on even if you turn them off.
Right. And they consume huge amounts of energy every time we charge and recharge and recharge. Just turn them off. It saves your battery life, and it doesn't consume as much for our sustainability efforts.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, I have a flip phone. That's just, it's just the way it is. And I will never go to a smartphone.
Congratulations.
And mine is an old iPhone 7. I keep it in airplane mode as a rule. Some folks are learning that when you're not on the go, like Patti said, use the landline. It's just the old corded phone, right? You don't want a cordless phone. Use the landline, and you can physically forward your cell phone calls right to that landline. This was only meant to be mobile technology. And then they talked us into replacing all of our wonderful hardwired technology with wireless. And it's not going backwards. It's reclaiming a better technology, because our signals are far faster, far more reliable when we plug in with Ethernet cables, phone cords, and adapters. So we just got kind of sold on the convenience of wireless, but hands down, hardwired connections. And as far as pregnant women go, if you do have to store it in your pocketbook, put it in full airplane mode. Make sure the Wi-Fi is off. Make sure airplane mode is on. Make sure Bluetooth is off. And then you can set alarms. Anything that's on your device, like your clock, your alarm, your camera, all that still works. It's right on your device. You don't need radiation signals to use a lot of what's on here. So we'll teach you more about that if you care to join us for one of our monthly free webinars.
One thing very important here is a researcher, a book writer from New York State. Jonathan Haidt is his name.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The Anxious Generation.
Anxious Generation, right? The name in English.
Yes, he's a professor at NYU.
NYU, yes. He gave a very important interview for like one of the most famous show here in Brazil a couple months ago. And it's really important, 14 years age to, what's the name? To postpone is how you say it?
Yes.
Postpone the moment to give the first smartphone to 14 years old, and the postpone to 16 years old to use social media. So that's very interesting, to give massive advertisement of these two ages and to become more popular, because here in Brazil there is a movement that said if nobody gives us a smartphone from your friends' children, would you give? If nobody gives, would you give? Because sometimes some parents think, oh, I'm not going to be the one you want different from the children of the parent, So there's like you have parents think they cannot be different. So I think we need to create some strategies and become more popular, this 14 years old strategy?
Yeah, and I think there are already some wonderful groups working on that. Here in the United States, we have a group of parents that have a project called Wait Until 8, which means wait until 8th grade, which is about that age 14, before you give your kid a cell phone. And when you get parents around you thinking on the same wavelength, then you have the power when your kid is, you're exhausted, you've worked all day, you're trying to get dinner done, and your kid's over there going, Mom, I want a cell phone. I need a cell phone. All my friends have a cell phone. I can't communicate. It's easy to cave in. But when we join together as a community of loving parents and say, here's why we're not going to let you have a cell phone. Maybe you have a dumb phone just to be able to contact us in emergency. Or every school has phones that can be used. I know parents are very worried, if there's a shooter in the building, what do? We want to be able to connect with our kid right away. But the last thing you want in an emergency is for a child to be on a cell phone. You want that child paying attention to the adults in the classroom, and you don't want to be jamming up the airwaves where emergency responders can't get in, and you don't want 100,000 parents showing up at the school where emergency responders can't even get into the school because the traffic is so backed up. So it's critically important that we really investigate this and come up with healthy strategies and stick together, because it's hard to do on your own. Nobody should be facing this alone. So get your loved ones, use the resources at Americans for Responsible Technology, train everybody up, and then together we are empowered to say, sweetheart, I love you so much that I'm not going to give you this adult device because you're a child and it's harmful on many levels, right? It's not a toy.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you
Sylvia,
for your words. Sylvia, you have a book about this, right?
Yes, I have a book that I wrote for parents, and it's a book with some tips of how to reduce your RF exposition. Very simple things that you can do, and it's interesting because I organized it by age groups. So pregnant woman, then 0 to 3 years old, 3 to 6, according to the age group, and teenagers. Giving those tips and also explaining to parents why should I take those precautions? What is the science behind it? So I also bring some of course science, but explained in a more simple way with lots of references. So if somebody wants to learn more about it, can research. But I bring I believe the most important issues, especially for each of these ages. Yeah, one of the things is, as you spoke about children, is the mitosis, because the RF radiation it affects mitosis very much. And children, they have stem cells, so they have much more mitosis than adults, right? So there's so many factors that children are much more vulnerable, and babies and pregnant women, that it's important to bring these issues, especially for those age groups, and of course for everybody. But the book is very simple, so it's any mother, any father can read. I'm a mother, so it's a mother to another mother, basically.
Thank you. Thank you, Sylvia. Playing with the Invisible is in Amazon or other bookstores.
Yes.
You can find it.
Can you show the picture, Aline?
Yeah, we show already.
Yeah.
I did. I didn't
Yeah.
see. Sorry. I was speaking. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you for writing that.
Yeah,
I
that's
think
great.
that's just another tool in our toolkit.
Yes, another toolkit.
Yeah.
So we reaching the end of our broadcast, our interview. So I ask each one of us to say like half a minute, just a final word, okay?
Sure.
So you want to start, Aline? Your considerations, final considerations.
I was actually reading the comments. People are very thankful for this meeting, for this live. Well, I think we got so much great information here. I am so happy about those two kids that I have not known about, and now I am I'm going to study and use it. I'm very happy with this idea of the safe and sound for public libraries. All great ideas you gave me. Now I am just out of words because there are so many ideas in my brain. But anyway, thank you again for this moment, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric and Nuri, your final words.
Yeah, I'm very happy to be here and to hear all this. And as Aline said, I have a lot of ideas in my mind now, and I think we all have to sit down afterwards and talk about it and change ideas and to think about next steps. And it was great to hear you all, and I'm very happy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cece, your final words. You're muted.
Thank you. I am just so delighted to be here with you today and to share all these little insights that we have along with the science. If I were to tell people what baby steps they might do, protect your sleep tonight. Put everything in airplane mode. Put your router on a timer for starters, because if we don't protect our sleep, then the body can't do cell repair while we sleep, and then we get to this cumulative tipping point. So protect your sleep. Start putting things in airplane mode as often as you can, and just keep learning. Give yourself a big pat on the back for showing up today, because that in itself takes courage. And like I said, I do a free public education webinar every month, so join us anytime. Thank you.
Thank you. Sylvia, your final words.
Wonderful presentation. We learned so many things today. We have to translate this to Portuguese so everybody here can watch. And I agree with you, Cece. I have two teenagers, and at least one thing I'm sure they learned. Put the cell phone in airplane mode at night or turn it off. At least that, because it's very difficult to educate teenagers. But that is the most important thing. I agree completely. Thank you very much for the presentation.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Patti and Doug, your final words.
Well, I just wanted to give a practical tip, and that is that a lot of school districts who have gone with this bell-to-bell ban, if you want to call it that, some of them do, are using these radiation blocking cases for the phones, because you're talking about hundreds and hundreds of students in a school, a typical high school in America. And so, it's hard to get kids to do exactly what they're supposed to do for turning everything off. And like Cece said, the phones ping when something is happening. And Doug said that, they're designed, even if you turn them off, to turn themselves back on again. So these radiation blocking sleeves or covers are really important. And there are some that work really well and some that don't. So you have to actually test them. But once you get, one or two brands or three brands, then you can actually promote those cases to school districts.
They don't have to do that in Brazil.
I know they don't have to do it in Brazil, but the kids are the kids actually taking the phones to school and then just leaving them in a locker, or are they not allowed to even bring them to school in Brazil?
I'm not sure. It depends. I believe they have a place to put the cell phones on the start bell, and then take the phone from the finish bell. I think that's it, but I'm not sure. I think depends of regulation. There's like a general law, then the specific regulation.
Yeah.
But I think they bring to school, but they are not allowed to use inside the classroom.
Right. So it's a little bit messy still. They haven't really figured it out exactly. So there's a lot of different, variations on these cell phone bans at school, but it is definitely a step in the right direction. And even as Doug said, they're using it because it will help these kids pay attention to the teachers and learn something. The radiation factor from our perspective is equally as important.
Before we go, I just wanted to say that a lot of the things that are in the toolkits are there because people like you asked us for them. So if there's something that you would like to have, let us know, and we'll try to make that happen. We have a lot of materials, but we don't have everything. So as I said,
That's right.
If there's something that would be very, hey, you already talked about it.
I know, but
Holy cow.
Holy cow.
However,
Go ahead.
however,
Don't talk to me. Go ahead.
no, never mind.
No, go ahead.
Never mind. We'll talk about this later.
Oh boy, I'm in trouble now.
oh boy.
Thank you.
Oh dear. No, I was gonna say that a lot of what is on the sites that we have, the Tech Safe School, the Babysafe Project, and Americans for Responsible Tech, are things that other people have inspired, or have done themselves. I mean, we have a lot of examples from what other people have done that are really, why reinvent the wheel, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, they're really useful.
Okay.
Is that okay?
I thought I said that.
I didn't say it clear enough.
Okay.
Oh,
Thank you
just
so much.
one thing. There's a comment here saying that in a school in Rio de Janeiro, the kids put the cell phone in a metallic locker.
Good.
Yes.
So they don't get radiation.
Great.
Right.
Great.
Yes.
Excellent.
So I thank you so much for this presentation. We believe that work with the pregnant woman and babies subject, it opens a little bit more the conscience of the people for a reason that maybe much more than adults. And we believe that there's a very nice door to introduce the subject of EMF protection to reduce this invisible toxin. So thank you so much for this presentation. We learned so much about these wonderful websites. I will put again in the screen. So we have techsafeschools.org. We talk also about Massachusetts for Safe Technology. Here's the website in the screen. We also talk about Safer Screentime, and we talk a lot about Americans for Responsible Technology in the toolkit section. The website of the Babysafe Project here. Also the Grassroots here. We also talk a little bit about the Environmental Health Trust is here.
Yeah.
The website of Slow Phone is here. We have a small section in English. And we also have our Telegram channel is t.me/slowphoneglobal. We have some information in English there. And also our YouTube channel, we have a playlist of many live broadcast interviews and movies. We have a very nice section of documentaries. So we did a review of all the documentaries of this subject in the world. There's more than 20. And in our website, they are chronological ordered. So it's very nice to study. So thank you very much. And let's keep working together. Like Cici said, this transformation movements, if we do in group, is much easier than just individual. So getting groups, working networks, we don't need to reinvent the wheels. There's a lot of good material, just need to translate and print it out and talk about, and let's plant these seeds every day. In couple years, we have very nice results if we keep working in group constantly with joy. Also with joy is very important.
Yes.
Bye bye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Obrigado.